You're on the air with Florenza, your podcast destination for authentic conversations with a twist. So, grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and join me on this unique literary journey. Cheers! Today's guest knows how to blend charm, mystery, and a touch of whiskered mischief. Author Sally Smith joins us to talk about her cozy new caper, A Case of Mice and Murder. So grab your favorite drink, curl up. This is one tale you won't want to miss. Put your hands together and welcome Sally to the show. Thank you so much, Sally, for joining me on this episode of On the Air with Florenza, where in just a few minutes, we are going to talk about your latest release, A Case of Mice and Murder. And I need to fix that because it looks like I'm backwards on my side. But before we get started, we are going to toast to an amazing show. So I have, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this is just cranberry juice. So
well, and mine's water.
Wonderful. We're cheers.
Well, cheers to the show.
Now, Sally, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your newest release, A Case of Mice and Murder.
Well, I've spent my whole life as a barrister, which I think you would call a trial lawyer. And I've worked in the Inner Temple, which is a historic little area of London, where the lawyers have worked since the 1300s. And I'm lucky enough to have a flat there as well. And so I'm steeped in the area, and very interested in the history of it. And I'd written a biography before, but I've always wanted to try my hand at fiction. And so I've written a detective novel, which is set in 1901, in the Inner Temple, where I myself live and work.
Nice. When you decided to write a fictional book, what did your friends and fellow baristas, is that how you say it?
Barristers.
Barristers. Yeah,
Yes.
barista makes coffee.
They're the guys who make the coffee. A lot more useful.
Barristers, what did they say, or did you tell anyone until it was done?
Didn't tell very many people, because the people I did tell said, "Oh, you'll never get it published. It's so incredibly hard to get detective novels published if no one's ever heard of you." And I don't like not succeeding at things. And I thought, well, that is probably true. And so I won't talk about it until I know it's got a publisher. So only very few of my sister and my husband and one or two of my friends, but on the whole, I kept it quite quiet.
Now, did you run through the Inner Temple going, nah, 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 nah?
I'd like to have done that. But since I didn't want everyone to hate me, no, I didn't do that.
They hate you already, girl. You can go for it. So, talking about A Case of Mice and Murder, I have a few questions that I've developed that I think are really good. So I'm excited to dive right in. Okay, so Gabriel presses his door 3 times every morning. Do you have a similar ritual, like your mornings or your writings or otherwise, that help you orient yourself before diving into work?
Yes, I do. The other thing that Gabriel, my hero, does is he likes to have his desk laid out in a particular way with his pen in its case and everything in order. And yes, I do. I've always had a sort of habit of tidying my desk before I begin in the mornings, and over the years it's kind of developed into everything being in the right place, and I don't like beginning if it isn't.
Nice.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I used to do that, and then somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought a tiny desk is a sign of a killer mind. So
Well, I mean, there may be some truth in that, but I think it's also, I mean, well, it's control, isn't it? It's sort of, it's making you feel you're in control before you begin. That's the magic.
I like that. So readers have raved about the dual mysteries, especially the charming Millie the Temple Church Mouse storyline. What's the quirkiest dual plot twist you've ever daydreamed up in real life and or fictionally?
Oh gosh, what a question. I mean, I think that was probably the story. I won't do any plot spoilers, but as you know, the dual story is that there's a murder in the temple, which Gabriel is a barrister, a lawyer preparing for his next case, and he has to investigate the murder at the same time as he's dealing with a very difficult case. And I think that actually that plot line is probably the quirkiest I've ever come up with, which is that it's a children's book which has had an amazing runaway success, but it was found in the street and it was published anonymously. So when it began to make hundreds of thousands of pounds, nobody knew who the money belonged to. And Gabriel's case is trying to find out who the true author was. Somebody comes forward and says, "I wrote this book and I'll have the money. Thanks very much." And this is the case about who the money really belonged to, because all the things that have been done with the book, of course, have been done without any kind of permission or contract, or so it's really, it's quite complicated and quite fun. And of course, in 1901, it's all pre-internet, and so there was no way of finding people in the way that there would be nowadays.
Uh-huh.
But
Brilliant.
as I say, I think that's the best I've come up with, really. So that's why I wrote it down before I forgot it.
That was brilliant. Now, your legal mind shines through Gabriel's methodical unraveling of the case. Was there a particular real court case or legal precedent that inspired a plot thread or the character's behavior?
Um, not no, not as directly as that, but I specialised in medical law, and I had to do a lot of big class actions, drug
Mhm.
related actions and actions with great many claimants. And if you have a lot of personalities as claimants, you end up getting a lot of sort of threads of people's lives in the litigation, because they've all got lived different life experiences, and they're all joined together by wanting damages in respect of one event. And I think that sort of way of looking at things with these sort of threads which weave together into a plot probably was as a result of the cases that I'd done.
Nice. Just a little bit here and a little bit there, and a sprinkle of
Exactly,
this and a
exactly,
sprinkle of that.
exactly.
And that's really good though, because it keeps anyone from coming forward trying to say, come on, Sally, you know you base that off of me.
No, I really didn't. And I mean, actually, I was quite careful not to, because that can get you into quite a lot of trouble.
It really could. So A Case of Mice and Murder. This is your debut novel. And I read that it was inspired partly because of the COVID lockdown, which was a time that really we were forced into solitude, seclusion. Um, and can you tell us about one unexpected creative insight that bloomed during this period of isolation?
Yeah, yes. I mean, you're right. It was exactly inspired by the lockdown. It was just that the lockdown, first of all, gave me the opportunity to sort of sit and concentrate on something with no distractions,
Mhm.
and secondly, it precluded doing any research that I didn't already have. And I previously written a biography, quite an academic legal biography, about a real lawyer in the UK. at around the same period. So I had all that research sitting there. So I thought I will try and use that research in fiction. And I thought, I'm not sure I can do this. I mean, the main thing I was worried about was I thought, I'm not sure I can write dialogue. I've never had to
Mm-hmm.
do that. And I think sitting there in lockdown with a kind of freedom to sort of do what you like and make things up. And I found I was fortunate and I wasn't directly affected by it in any other way. And I found it very liberating to be able
Yeah.
to sit at my desk and think, it doesn't matter what I say, I can make it up. If it's
Yeah.
bad, I can get rid of it and try it again. And there's no one sees it. And, so it was a very peaceful time. It's a bit like being a hermit, wasn't it?
Yes, it really was for a lot of us. Now,
Yeah.
as we've been speaking, I see the number 14 over your right shoulder, if I'm gauging correctly. What is that? Is that symbolic of something? Tell us the story behind 14, or it's just a number.
I'd forgotten that was there. And just as I was tuning in to join you, I looked at that and thought, I must take that down because she's going to wonder why I've got 14 behind my shoulder. The answer is that when I first married my husband, our
You were
first,
14 years old? No.
and neither was he, you'll be pleased to hear. It was the number of our first flat. And
Oh,
his mother, my mother-in-law, who's now dead, lived in Cornwall, and she had this beautiful slate. It's a slate number plate made for our flat. So that when we
oh,
eventually left the flat, we took the number plate with us, and it's on my bookcase and has been ever since. And that's 25 years ago.
oh, isn't that wonderful? That's so sweet.
Yeah,
I
well,
love
she'd be
that.
very pleased if she knew you were asking about it.
Yay to our mother-in-law who is with us in love. I like that. So, the writing for A Case of Mice and Murder is praised for both, and I love these adjectives, for being dusty and warm, given the inner temple surroundings, with really this living heartbeat. If the temple itself could talk, what's one secret it would confess?
Gosh. Um, I think it would. This sounds much less affectionate than I mean it to, because I love it dearly. But I think it would probably admit to certain self-satisfaction
Uh-huh.
because it is this tiny area. It's the whole temple is only 15 acres.
Oh.
It's very beautiful, and it hasn't, apart from having had bomb damage and being, so parts of it were rebuilt, but the old bits haven't changed in centuries, and it's still, I mean, the public can come in and they're hugely welcome, but it holds the world at bay because it's got gateways and porters on them, and it's enclosed, and so it is a little world in the heart of London. And as I say, I think it would probably say I'm quite pleased with myself to have survived intact and so beautiful for so long.
I that is such a great answer. I love that. I love that so much. At first, I was thinking, oh, she's going to tell us some juicy gossip, you know. But I love that
I've got
answer.
more sense on air.
So let's shift gears just a bit. If you could host a dinner in 1901 with Gabriel, Agatha Christie, or the anonymous author of Millie the Temple Church Mouse, what would you serve and who would get the last biscuit?
Well, Gabriel would, I'll start backwards and say Gabriel would get the last biscuit because he's very, very dear to my heart. And I'd love to meet him. I'd love to be sitting at a dinner table with him. But other than that, I don't know. Oddly enough, I'm writing another one at the moment, and I'm doing a lot of research into vegetarianism in 1901, which was, just beginning.
Yeah.
So maybe I'd give them all something vegetarian. It's a really, really interesting. I mean, I didn't know any of this, and one of the nice things about writing novels is that you start a little bit of research, and you get into a sort of whole new world. And the beginning of vegetarianism was very linked with the beginning of women's rights. And the first sort of women's groups in London met in vegetarian restaurants.
Oh,
And there was a sort of whole thing of them being allowed to go alone to eat there where they couldn't in normal restaurants. So it's a very interesting area. So they can have a vegetarian meal and Gabriel can have the last biscuit.
you can have the last biscuit. Wonderful. On a personal note, you've lived inside the legal world for decades. What's one misconception about being a barrister that you'd love to set straight, even if it's through Gabriel's character?
I think because lawyers are very precise people, and they have to be, and they're paid to be. And I think as a result, people get this sort of idea that they're all very stuffy and dull. And that really, really is not my experience. I mean, there are people with interesting minds. And as I say, they've trained their minds to present themselves in a certain way. But underneath, they're a very, very creative, amusing, clever bunch.
Uh-huh. Very good. I love that. What's something or one thing that you would want the reader to walk away with after having read A Case of Mice and Murder?
I'd find that very easy to answer. I'd like them to walk away saying that was a really good story. I myself like reading good stories with, beginnings and middles and ends, which are entertaining and you feel satisfied by, and that's what I'd like them to think.
Wonderful. When you sent in the last draft, your edits were done, everything that needed to be said was said, and you closed the computer, you put down the pen. What was that experience like for you?
Um, a kind of mixture. I was very terribly proud and pleased when it was published. I felt I had almost immediately. I'd already begun the second one by the time the edits were done on the first one because of the provisions of my contract. But I felt a sort of sense of loss as well. I mean, I really lived in it and I loved it. And I mean, then of course I lived and loved in the second one, but you have to kind of get into them.
Yes.
And by the time you reach the end, you're really into that one. And having to sort of stop and say that's finished was quite hard.
Oh, I love it. Now, let's talk about, I know that I should have started with this. Um, Tell us about the title. And was that your idea for the title, or is that just a combination of yourself with the editors and your team?
No, the truth is that that title really was. I mean, of course, with my agreement and approval, but it was decided upon by the publishers. And the second one, which is just coming out in the UK, it's called A Case of Life and Limb. So it's also alliterative, and they like the sort of that ring. And I was very uncertain at first, if I'm truthful, but I really, well, of course it's my book, and you can't, it's a
Yes.
bit like when you name a baby, you think,
Uh-huh,
oh, why
uh-huh.
have they called it that? But you quickly get used to it, and now I think I can't imagine it being called anything else.
Yes, I love it. And I absolutely love, I know that my background is slightly blurred, but I really love the cover as well. It's just so much going on without being overwhelming at all. So kudos
I
to,
think it's yes, I think it's great. It's got the outline of the back. At the back is the outline of the Royal Courts of Justice.
uh-huh.
Yeah, that at the back, and then the doorway and the lantern are actually taken from the doorways in the inner temple. There are many doorways with these cast iron arches with a lantern in the top and a curved door.
And then we have the poor little mouse down there with the
And the
knife.
poor
And
little mouse, yes.
and I love that the walls inside, and then it looks like the blood running through. So that was
Yes.
brilliant. Well done. Well done. Where are the listeners able to follow you and engage with you, Sally?
Well, now that's the question. I'm not on social media, but I have an author's page on Amazon,
Wonderful.
so they can get on and see the things I'm writing there. But other than that, and I'm doing lots and lots of interviews, so I'm not a hermit.
She's not the hermit. She's out there in these literary streets.
I wouldn't be talking to you if I was a hermit, but I think social media. I mean, I haven't done it so far, and I kind of think it's probably a
Yeah.
step too far.
Listen, I concur. I absolutely concur. This was so much fun. So we've come to the part of my show that I call Last Call. It's where we are just going to have some fun with some rapid fire questions. It's one or two questions that are designed so that we can just end on a very high note. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to take a sip. Would you rather argue one last high-profile case in court or spend a year writing uninterrupted in a cottage by the sea?
Oh, writing for a year in the cottage by the sea, uninterrupted.
Uninterrupted. Absolutely. Unless it's a little mouse that wants to come along.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want a mouse or two.
Yes. Would you rather give up tea for a year or hand in your inner temple library card permanently?
Oh, give up tea for a year.
Now, are you a huge tea drinker?
No, I'm not. I'm a coffee drinker. If you'd asked me with coffee, it would have been a much harder question.
Would you rather, last one, would you rather mentor a young barrister or a debut novelist just finding their voice?
I think I'd rather mentor a young barrister because I feel like a debut novelist finding her voice. I don't think I'm quite at the stage of helping other people yet. But young barristers, I could tell quite a lot.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Sally. This has been so much fun.
Thank you very much, Florenza, and thank you very much for inviting me. And I really hope your listeners enjoy the book.
Thank you. Oh, side note, if ever you're looking for like a real side hustle, you should really consider being a voiceover character for like children's cartoons or children's movies. I think you have an amazing voice for, I was thinking of like, as you were speaking, I just saw like this either a teacher or a librarian or
Oh dear.
something kind of voice going. You have such a great voice.
My husband's grandchildren always say I sound like Grandma Pig in the Peppa Pig cartoons.
If ever
So
I
I
write
audition.
if ever I write a book that needs your voice, I am going to ask for you to do the reading because I absolutely love your voice.
Thank you. That's very kind. I'd be delighted.
I've been trying to think of more questions. I'm like, I don't want Sally to go.
Oh, no, that's sweet of you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorenzo. Bye.
And this wraps up another episode of On the Air with Florenza. You may follow me on all social media platforms under Florenza Lee or via my website at florenza.org. Until next time, cheers.